Did you want me to start, Vivian? Vienna?
Yes. Since the recording already started, I guess we can just cut the beginning part out. But I was thinking, just give me like 2 sentences of who you are, why you're interested in neurodiversity, and I will, I'll start the podcast after that.
Sounds good. Good morning. My name is Melanie Heit, and I am the mother of two neurodivergent, wonderful children. My daughter is 24 years old, and my son is 12 years old. I have been an advocate for both of them for as long as they've been alive, and I am very excited to be seeing other organizations that are out there to support and help families and individuals who are neurodivergent.
Okay. I guess I'm gonna get started then. Welcome to Neuroflow, brought to you by the Neurodiversity Ambassadors. Neuroflow aims to foster a caring for the neurodiverse, create a welcoming society for all, and celebrate neurodiversity. Each episode, we will host a new guest speaker diving into their thoughts on neurodiversity and the neurodiverse experience. I'm your host, Vienna Lee, and today's guest is Melanie Heit, a mother of two neurodivergent children. She's an advocate for both of her children, and she has had immense experience with helping people in the neurodivergent community. So let's start off with our first question. Could you please summarize your experience parenting a neurodiverse child?
Hi, Vienna. Yes, my experience has been a varied one in that with my first neurodiverse child, I had really no experience at all and had to find everything out for myself. And it was harder to find resources because, you know, this started 24 years ago. Whereas with my son, who's 12 years old, I already had a lot of experience. And I feel that have been more resources available, or at least they've been more readily accessible to families such as mine. So it's been a pretty wild ride overall.
I imagine it must have been very challenging, especially at first, to get those resources. And were there any distinctive parenting abilities and characteristics you think that you've gained as a result of your child's neurodiversity?
Definitely, definitely patience, resilience, the ability and willingness to overcome adversity again and again and again, and to repeat processes and repeat information again and again and again, sometimes to seeming meaningless effect. However, doing what needed to be done in order to get to an end result. And definitely tenacity is something that I didn't know that I had um, a wealth of until parenting my neurodivergent children.
So, how are things are going in your daily life? What happens on an average day in your family?
Well, first, there is no such thing as an average day. Every day is very different. My life situation changed about 5 years ago when my children's father and I ended our marriage. So we have two different households. Also, my daughter is now living independently in a facility for individuals with uh, neurodivergent differences, but still I have daily contact with her, and she still requires a lot of my input assistance, and I still have to arrange a lot of things for her in order to keep the wheels in motion. The weeks that I have my son, um, they have structure, but they also have a lot of unpredictability, depending on how he's feeling, and how he's interacting with his environment, which frankly, even as the person who knows him best in the world, um, I can't always predict how that's going to go. So there's a lot of unpredictability. Sometimes things can be completely smooth sailing, and other times there's challenge after challenge, and it can be difficult.
Yeah, I'm sure the unpredictability makes it very difficult to sometimes reach them and understand how they're thinking. And so we were just wondering if you could share some of your most memorable moments with your children. What differs in these occurrences from experiences maybe by typical parents of neurodiverse children?
Um, well, I have to say that like the famous poem that talks about Holland, which is if you guys haven't explored in a podcast, is something that you should talk about. It's a very well-known poem in the community that talks about how you planned on a trip to Italy, having a child, and then you turned out with a neurodiverse or a child with other disabilities, and the plane landed and you were in Holland. So I have been in Holland for my whole parenting journey, as much as I thought that I was going to go to Italy on my second parenting experience. But as far as different, I think that in some ways there's no differences, and in other ways it's completely a different process. Now, if you wanted memorable moments, I could give you some high moments, I could give you some low moments, with each of them. You know, the moment when I realized that my son needed medication was one of my lowest moments. We were on the one big family vacation that we had taken in his life, um, to SeaWorld, and he just was. And now, in retrospect, I think he was completely overstimulated, and even though I had tried to prepare him and prepare myself, there was no preparation that could have led me to think that he would break away, and I would have to chase him into a private dolphin enclosure where he almost I had to basically tackle him, and we ended up rolling around in front of the private dolphin enclosure before he leapt in, and we both ended up kind of, battered, bruised, and not feeling really happy. And then that was the moment when I realized that, as much as I didn't want to do it, that my son was going to have to go on medication for his safety and for the safety of others around him. And that was and still is a very difficult thing to deal with and face as a parent. And I would say to other parents, you have to keep your child safe, and no matter what anybody says, don't allow yourself to feel guilt. Don't listen to the people who say, well, you shouldn't medicate them no matter what, because they're not living in your reality. Some of the high moments, seeing my daughter give a keynote speech at a conference for individuals with disability, that I didn't think that she has medical challenges as well as neurodiverse challenges, and that was one of my proudest and most heartfelt moments. she's not in that good place now, but I have to remember that she's been in that good place before and that she can return to that. So, like I said, in some ways, I'd say it completely differs, and that my friends, family, and people I encounter who have never been in this world even though they're well-meaning, really don't understand the reality that's faced, and others do.
Yeah, it's absolutely true that each parent has their different experiences, and we really appreciate you're here to share your genuine and honest experiences about that. It was very heartwarming to hear. Um, so, what are some of the most difficult obstacles you've experienced as a mother with a neurodiverse or disorder, and how did you get past these obstacles?
I'm still getting past them on a daily basis, because, like I said, Vienna, a lot of it is the unpredictability, and not just the unpredictability of my child, who is having I have to think about what is going on in their body and in their brain that's causing them. This is not them being obstinate or oppositional. There are things, messages are being coded so differently that I can't even really begin to relate to or understand to how they're experiencing the world. However, that being said, I think one of the most difficult obstacles is other people's need seemingly to label my now adult and you know younger child as either oppositional, bad, uh, unintelligent, um, or that to label me as a bad parent when they do not know anything. And I'm not saying that they know that my children are neurodivergent, but even that being said, people are just very quick to judge and quick to label. And there was an instance when my son was young where he was um, just impulsively zooming a Matchbox card down the counter at McDonald's. And it was a busy time, and I was trying to order. And, I had asked him to stop a couple of times, and he didn't. But I was trying to order the food, and we were there with a friend. We were on a play date, and he stepped in front of a gentleman, and the gentleman said something not nice to him. And I said, "Pardon me, sir." I said, "I'm going to get him out of the way here." And he actually said, "Well, if you were any kind of good parent, he would have listened to you the first 5 times you asked him. Obviously, you don't know what you're doing, and obviously, he's a really bad kid." And my friend who was with me was very stridently speaking up for me, and she was actually asked that if she said anything else, she was going to be asked to leave the restaurant. And this gentleman just went on his merry way. Um, that was a really tough moment, and I've had many other moments like that where with both of my kids, and the pain that that causes over and over, and the idea that we're supposed to accept that and not speak up because obviously the worker was thinking that this gentleman was correct, even though he knew nothing about me, my son, or our situation. So um that is faced routinely. Other people's making assumptions, and you know what they say about assumptions. I'm not going to say it on the podcast, but it just they're not valid, they're not reasonable, and they're often not accurate or fair.
The words that the gentleman said definitely cut deep, and I'm sure it has had a very large impact on you. And like you said, people make assumptions way too quick, and they believe that they know a person when they really don't know. We all come from different backgrounds, different experiences, and I think it definitely is a very important aspect that we embrace each other, and also be humble in the sense that we don't know people, and we can't just assume where they're coming from or what they think. And so that being the humility and interacting with people is definitely one thing we also want to highlight here on the podcast. And um, moving on to our next question, um, how do you balance looking after your neurodiverse children while also looking after your own wellness and family responsibilities? I'm sure as a mother, you've had to balance the work and life schedule. And so we would like to see, if you had any thoughts on how you would balance such a challenging life.
Well, my answer is going to be, how do I do this? Not very well. And as I speak to many other parents, mostly mothers, who have neurodiverse children and have challenges. I mean, there's a whole it runs the whole gamut depending on the family situation. There have been times when I've said, I'm just doing things for myself, and I'm not going to feel guilty, but it's hard not to feel guilty when I'm not I mean, of course, all basic needs are being met, but there's an endless list of calls and emails and, things paperwork for both of my children, and it can drown you. It can strangle you. Um, so you have to come up for air, even if you're gasping, and you have to make that time and work for that balance, even if it's hard. So I would say it's hard. And one of the sacrifices that I've made for my children is that I have not, even though financially I really could use to be working full time, I am not working full time, and I have not worked full time in many years since I've been parenting these children, because it takes so much, and somebody has to be the point person. I'd love to be able to, and I've tried to hand off responsibilities, but unfortunately, as well-meaning as people are, that nobody does it the way that you're doing it, and nobody understand when you've been the person who not only understands the child the best, but understands the process the best. It's very difficult to hand off, and um, basically, I feel like every mother of a neurodiverse child should be just handed an assistant um, to help them. And that's not that's a magical fantasy, but that's really what it would take in order to achieve a better balance.
I'm sure you've definitely made a huge sacrifice, and that must have been a difficult decision for you. But yes, I understand where you're coming from, and I acknowledge that parenting is definitely not an easy thing. And we really appreciate that you are here sharing your experience about that, because we genuinely care about your experience and what it's like for the neurodiverse community, and we would like to better understand where they are also coming from. So now we are going to transition in a more positive light, and we would like to ask what types of support groups you have discovered to be useful during your journey. Are there any organizations or groups of people that have been especially helpful to you?
It's a great question, Vienna. There have been different groups at different times, and I really I'm actually in search of something that I think on the parenting journey, there are different groups that support you and where you're at with your needs in a certain stage, and they might not carry through the entire journey. So, some a group that supports you when your child is a baby or a toddler may not have the resources or the interest to support when they're adolescents or preteens or teenagers or adults. I have found that Span has had some interesting programs that have given me some empowerment as an advocate for my children. Um, there have been various parenting groups, and a lot of them, I really did more when my daughter was younger because it's also been with the medical pieces to her neuro and that tie into her neurodivergence that and they've been I would say that specifically looking for giving give it to give a you know a hint to other parents, look for something that a broad parenting group can be great, but sometimes the issues are going to be so different. That's what I found, at least, that there's some commonalities overall, but if your child has a specific type of, I'm going to say, set of behaviors or tendencies or medical symptoms, then looking for a more tailored group is also. I don't think one size fits all in the way of support groups. My daughter having PANS slash PANDAS, I've been in a lot of support groups for families who are in that parenting arena. I've done some of the ADHD magazine webinars and stuff for my son, and that has been informative. I wouldn't say that it necessarily gave me support. I'm still searching for the unicorn of support groups, I'll say. And I know it's out there. It might be a unicorn mermaid, but you just have to keep looking.
So stemming off of our question, our next question is quite similar. So now that we've talked about how parents may navigate the experience, how might neurotypical people support and ally with neurodivergent people more effectively? How can we foster this community within the neurodivergent population?
I think that's an incredible question, and I think tolerance and patience, which really go across so many stratum and layers of society and issues. We are all at the core. We're all human beings. We're not rocks, we're not dogs, we're not aliens, we're not unicorn mermaids. We're human beings. And really, one type of human being is not superior to another. And knowing that, or accepting that, and saying, okay, this person's behavior annoys me. I mean, hey, that's part of being human. People are going to annoy other people, but having the patience, having the tolerance to, um, number one, understand what's going on, because you may make that assumption, just like that fellow in McDonald's did with my son, that, I'm a bad mother and he's a bad kid. But that was not what's going on. I had a hungry, overstimulated, child on the autism spectrum with severe ADHD who also had some anxiety about being in a crowd. And, you don't know. Don't assume that Again, that assume, don't assume. We can make some new acronym for that. And tolerance, patience, and asking questions, but asking them in a respectful way, like you'd want to be asked. My mother, who I miss really a lot, had said one thing to me that stuck with me, and I think this was, all the viewers or all the listeners, I should say, the golden rule: do unto others as you would have done unto you. That's how we should conduct our lives. I know that's pie in the sky, but I would say, if I was going to say one succinct sentence, it would be use the golden rule.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Definitely treat others the way others you would want to be treated. That is definitely the rule that we want to strive for. And I'm sure that staying humble and asking questions and being overall a very welcoming person, have a welcoming personality is definitely going to bridge the gap between and raise awareness about the stigma against the neurodivergent. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah. So this concludes our podcast for today. Mrs. Height, thank you so much once again for joining us today. It was really a pleasure talking to you and learning from you. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Neuroflow.